Hanzo the Salamander is a character who rarely appears in the Naruto series, but despite his limited screen time, he was surrounded by a legendary reputation, and the many statements made about him suggest that he was once one of the most powerful and fierce shinobi in the world of Naruto. However, due to this obscurity of showings in the manga, not many people talk about his overall strength. So today I'm going to be talking about how strong Hanzo was. For the video, I'll be using most of the material provided by the manga, but I'll also be using outside sources such as databooks just to provide more info if needed. So Hanzo is a legendary shinobi of the Hidden Rain village, whose power and skill were well known and feared by many, so much so that upon hearing his name, people ran in fear for their lives. Like many shinobi in the world of Naruto, Hanzo also had the goal of wanting to bring peace to the shinobi world by uniting all 5 nations, a very difficult goal to achieve due to the shinobi world being ruled by the cycle of hatred. But later on, he came to the conclusion that true peace was impossible, which led to his decline. To start off, let's talk about the confrontation with Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru during the Second Shinobi War, as this was a time when Hanzo was at his strongest, facing off the Sanin when they were jonin. For what is shown, we see a battlefield where an entire platoon has been neutralized, and the only survivors are the Sanin. On top of that, they are shown to have taken some damage, yet Hanzo shows to have taken no damage at all. This demonstrates that even with a full unit's tactical support, the collective might of the trio was insufficient to even inflict minor damage on Hanzo, which does speak to his overall strength and why he was feared by many shinobi even during the modern era. Now, I just want to point out that in this fight, the Sanin are not as powerful as their current versions due to them improving their skills and abilities over the years, with further implications to being strong enough to scale to Hiruzen, who was stated to be the strongest Kage of the 5 nations. But there's a moment in the series that many mention to prove that Hanzo is even stronger than the Sanin still. This stems from chapter 369, where Jiraiya was interrogating a Rain shinobi who tells him that Pain single-handedly ended the civil war within the Rain village and defeated Hanzo. This put Jiraiya in a state of visible shock, and he even expressed disbelief at the fact that Hanzo was defeated. This reaction of his is used to make the claim that Hanzo was still superior even after all of this time. However, I see that many tend to disregard what happens afterwards, which makes this moment a bit more questionable. As before confronting Pain, Jiraiya doesn't even attempt to go into Sage mode. Keep in mind that he should have an idea of how strong Hanzo was due to fighting him in the past. He also just heard that Pain was able to defeat Hanzo all by himself, yet still goes off without going into his strongest form. Not to mention that he only goes into Sage mode only after finding out that Pain possessed the Rinnegan. Now this could mean that even though he was shocked, it wasn't confirmation that he was inferior to Hanzo at all, but just genuine shock, as it's safe to say that Hanzo was probably the strongest opponent he faced during his jonin years. But there's another moment during the war arc, where in a flashback, we see Pain confronting Hanzo. The scene shows Pain standing in front of an injured Hanzo after killing all of his bodyguards. He then scolds Hanzo for only becoming interested in maintaining his own survival. He makes a statement saying, "You don't even know why you lost," and then proceeds to kill him. This statement is used by many to insist that Pain admitted inferiority to Hanzo, as it's tied to the idea of Hanzo losing his conviction. And prior to this scene, it's mentioned how Hanzo became so much weaker. This is critical to Hanzo's scaling, as Pain was one of the strongest villains in the entire series, with accolades such as defeating people like Sage Mode Jiraiya and Kakashi, and also scaling to the likes of an unmastered Sage Mode Naruto, who was also mentioned to being stronger than Sage Mode Jiraiya. Furthermore, the narrative does make Pain out to being a villain on a different level, even in comparison to other Akatsuki members, and this is demonstrated by him destroying the entire Leaf village with a single attack. Now, at face value, Hanzo doesn't have any other evidence to really support that he's in fact stronger than Pain, but given the narrative and the statements made about him, it wouldn't be an exaggeration for him being this strong, as Pain himself acknowledged his strength at one point, where in comparison he looked down at Tsunade and Jiraiya when confronting them, not even caring about the strength they possessed. So with this knowledge, Hanzo could arguably be stronger than the Sanin past their prime. And since there is a connection of scaling Hanzo above the Sanin, I think it's important to talk about how strong they are, just to understand how strong Hanzo was. I won't go too in depth, as I do plan on making a video on how strong the Sanin are in the near future. So the Sanin are some of the strongest shinobi to ever come out of Konoha. Their strength and abilities were considered to be on a class of their own, with very few shinobi capable of fighting on their level. When it comes to their scaling, it's really straightforward, as the 3 of them are depicted as being equal in terms of power and possess feats and statements that show they scale to the likes of Hiruzen. Now this mainly stems from the fight between him and Orochimaru, where he is shown holding his own and he forced Hiruzen into a corner at times. However, this wasn't Hiruzen fighting at his best due to the fact that he was suffering from a mental nerve, which greatly affected his fighting ability. But it's also mentioned in the databooks that Orochimaru wasn't going all out either, but they add a scene of him needing to hurt himself to hold back his emotions for his former teacher. This fight in general had key moments where Orochimaru and Hiruzen gained the upper hand on one another, with the statement depicted them as fighting as equals. So if you take the scaling of the Sanin alongside a statement made by Pain, it shows that Hanzo at his prime was one of the strongest shinobi of all time. This is especially true during the Second Shinobi War, as based on what we know about Hanzo, no one seemed to be a match for him other than Hiruzen. Now there's an implication of granting Chiyo being a match for Hanzo due to her statement of how she fought him many times, and many assume that the him means Hanzo. The issue is, Chiyo could be referring to just his salamander, as the context of the statement focuses on the poison it shoots out, and even if Chiyo was referring to Hanzo, he doesn't even acknowledge her during the short interaction. And given the knowledge of how Hanzo at its best could even be more powerful than Pain, it's unlikely that she was ever a match for him. Now let's talk about the decline of Hanzo's power and how it affected him. We're going to focus on the battle between him and Mifune, as everything we need to know happens within the 2 chapters of this fight. So it starts off with Hanzo mocking Mifune and the other samurai for serving shinobi. Mifune responds to this by stating that they don't serve them, but instead follow the master called peace. This leads into a brief rant by Hanzo about how he once tried to aim for true peace, but over the years came to the conclusion that shinobis have no goal of peace, and are instead ruled by money and power. This conclusion caused him to believe that he was the same, which led to him giving up his conviction of peace and focus on preserving his survival and power over the Rain Village. We later see Mifune overwhelm Hanzo throughout their fight, easily outspeeding him and doesn't sustain any damage during their clashes. Mifune states that the reason for this is because Hanzo lost his conviction, and due to this, it caused him to become a shell of the shinobi he once was. No longer the same man who soloed the Sanin, but a man who was much weaker than a samurai who he defeated in the past. This leads me into another point I want to talk about, and that is mental nerfs. These nerfs in Naruto are very prevalent throughout the series, as it's shown to have a great effect on a shinobi's overall fighting ability. This could range from a loss of will, self-doubt, and much more. Some examples of shinobi being affected by a mental nerf would be when Hiruzen was fighting Orochimaru and when Tsunade fought Kabuto. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because Hanzo's lost conviction does equate to a mental nerf. It made him lose the strength that made him once feared by many, and if he didn't lose his conviction, Hanzo would have been a much more dangerous threat, especially during the war arc. Hanzo also possesses many abilities that makes him very deadly to face in battle. For starters, during his time as a kid, a salamander's venom sac was placed inside him, which gave him the nickname Hanzo the Salamander. This body modification allowed him to be resistant to poison, and he could intoxicate his opponents by just breathing around them. He also has a salamander summoning that can release a poisonous gas capable of paralyzing foes. He's also shown using the explosive flame formation, which is a jutsu where Hanzo embeds fire style into explosive tags that stick to an opponent and destroys them. This jutsu also left a powerful shinobi like Naruto crippled for many years. Hanzo is also shown to be fast with the use of body flicker during his encounter with the demonic statue, and it's stated that he's unmatched when submerged, making him superior to both Tobirama and Kisame in combat underwater. Keep in mind that this is the same Kisame we see completely destroy Killer B when he was submerged in the water bubble. So that's about it for Hanzo. Let me know your thoughts about him, and if you want to see more videos about Hanzo, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.